Nvidia stock investors got some great news about the company's profit margins from the company's management team. And there was growing concerns about these profit margins, so it was some critical great news for Nvidia stock investors. Now, I know what you're going to say. If it was great news, then why is the stock underperforming? Why is it having difficulty rising after all of these developments? And that's a whole nother story. And I'll talk briefly about that and touch briefly on that in this video. But this video will mostly be about this one particular news item that's great to hear for NVIDIA stock investors. So let's take a look.
I want to thank The Motley Fool for sponsoring this video. Visit fool.com/Parkev for the 10 best stocks to buy now.
So NVIDIA's gross profit margins had been under pressure in recent quarters. In the most recent quarter, the fourth quarter of fiscal year 2025, NVIDIA reported gross profit margins of 73%. That was down from the previous quarter where they reported 74.6% in gross profit margin. And it was down much more from the same quarter last year where they reported gross profit margins of 76%. Now, that's a downtrend, but one thing to note, if you zoom out, a gross profit margin of over 70% is excellent for any business, especially for a business like Nvidia that sells mostly hardware products. So this worry about falling margins is a kind of being picky about an investment. And I'm usually very picky on these kinds of things when a stock is trading at a super premium valuation. But Nvidia is not trading at a super premium valuation. Its forward price to earnings ratio is less than 30. So it's trading like around a similar valuation of Coca-Cola stock, and it's trading cheaper than it's like half the valuation of Costco stock and a fraction of the valuation of Tesla stock. So it's not trading at these super premium valuations where I would demand that every single particular thing about the business be absolutely excellent and heading in the excellent direction. Right? That's what I require from businesses that are trading at super premium valuations. But that's not where Nvidia is. So that's one point to make here. Another thing is the management team forecasted a continuing falling gross profit margin. Let me share that with you. So management gave their forecast for the next quarter. For Nvidia, that's the first quarter of fiscal year 2026. Now, I know we're in 2025 and they're talking about 2026, and that's because companies are allowed to have fiscal years that are different than the calendar year. And so you get these mismatches like you see with Nvidia, where they're in their first quarter of 2026, when the rest of the world, if we're looking on a calendar basis, we're just now entering or we're still in the first quarter of 2025. So that's one thing. The gross profit margins is what I want you to look at here. They're expected to be between 70% and 71%, which would be lower than where they were in this quarter, right? So again, another decline for the gross profit margin. So you can understand why investors were becoming concerned because NVIDIA's gross profit margins just kept falling. Even though they have a really, really strong gross profit margin, you still don't like to see this declining trend. So, okay, Parkev, the title of this video said great news for NVIDIA stock investors, and so far, all you've talked about is the bad news. Well, let's get into the great news then. The management team in the earnings call said this, that as this new Blackwell technology is ramping, they expect gross profit margins to be in the low 70 percentages, as they forecasted in the upcoming quarter. So the reason for that, they said, is they're focused on expediting the manufacturing of Blackwell systems to meet strong customer demand as they race to build out the infrastructure. When they get fully ramped up, they have many opportunities to improve the cost and gross margin, will improve and return to the mid 70 percentages late this fiscal year. That's the great news, is this decline in gross profit margin management is saying it's because they're trying to hurry up this new system. They're not bringing it up on their normal speed. They're bringing it up on a hurried speed because they want to get it out into their customers' hands because the customers are asking for it earlier too. So they're trying to hurry it up and get it into customer hands. And then when they get it up and running at full speed under normal conditions, they expect to be in mid 70 percentages later this year. So it's going to fall in the first quarter. It'll probably remain low, maybe fall further in the second quarter of fiscal year 2026 for Nvidia. So maybe 2 straight quarters of low 70 percentages in gross profit margin. And then in the third and fourth quarter, you're going to see that ramp back up to the mid 70s percentages. The good news is not in the specific, whether it's 72% or 75%, it doesn't make a huge difference on the bottom line for Nvidia. But what it does do is alleviate a concern from investors and reduce that risk that the company is unable to sustain this gross profit margin, right? Because this is one of the primary reasons why Nvidia stock is so attractive, is not only the revenue is growing so quickly, but so are the profits, and the profit margins are excellent. Nvidia's operating profit margin of over 60% is one of the best of any of the companies I follow. And that's a primary selling point of Nvidia as an investment. And so if those margins were feared that they're going to continue falling, then that makes Nvidia a less attractive investment. But if the margins were just temporarily going down and then they're going to recover, then the long-term viability or the long-term attractiveness of Nvidia as an investment is still very, very strong. So that's why this is great news for Nvidia stock investors. If you can look beyond the concerns and the headwinds the stock price is facing right now because of the macroeconomic geopolitical concerns with the tariffs and the tensions between the United States and the rivals, and this change in administration, which is changing the geopolitical dynamics. All of that is pressuring Nvidia stock in the near term, understandably so. But longer term, the company's competitive advantages in an industry that's very attractive makes it a very attractive investment at current prices for long-term buyers.
Hey everyone, so many of you have been asking about my investing strategy, and I'm excited to announce that I've written a book that's available for sale now that describes my 6-step investing framework for evaluating stocks. I've added the link in the description below.